The cereal milk had gone warm 20 minutes ago, but Jade hadn't noticed. She stood at the kitchen counter in yesterday's scrubs, the washing machine had broken again, and the laundromat cost $8 she didn't have, watching the electric kettle boil for the third time that morning. Not for tea. Just for the sound of something working, something successful at its simple purpose. The medical bill envelope sat on the counter, $347 past due. Caleb's inhaler prescription, $180, due in 6 days. Her last shift at Mercy General had been a double, 16 hours that left her feet purple bruised and her back seized. The next shift started in 4 hours. Behind her, the television murmured, a morning business segment she'd left on because the apartment felt too quiet, too much like giving up. The anchor's voice cut through, Ethan Blackwood, whose revolutionary AI platform has disrupted 3 industries in 18 months, making him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in tech. Jade's hands moved automatically, pouring the finely boiled water over a tea bag she'd already used twice. Mom. She didn't turn. Caleb had learned not to ask for things in the mornings anymore, had learned to eat his cereal in silence while she stared at bills with the expression of someone decoding enemy transmissions. Mom, that man looks like me. The mug slipped. Not dropped, her nurse's reflexes caught it, but the water sloshed over her hand, scalding. She didn't feel it. Because she'd turned toward the television, toward her 8-year-old son pointing at the screen with the spoon still in his hand, milk dripping onto the table neither of them noticed. The man being interviewed had Caleb's exact jawline. That same slight asymmetry in the smile. The dark hair with the cowlick at the left temple that never cooperated. But it was the eyes that stopped Jade's breath, that specific shade of gray-blue that looked silver in certain light, the shape of them, slightly hooded, intense even in repose. She'd seen those eyes in her bathroom mirror every morning for 8 years. Seen them in her son's face. Seen them 7 years ago across a hotel ballroom, belonging to a man who'd introduced himself as just Ethan and disappeared before sunrise. The glass she'd been holding, empty, she'd drunk the water without tasting it, fell from her other hand. This one she didn't catch. It shattered on the linoleum in a spray of glittering fragments that looked, in the blue television glow, like scattered diamonds. Caleb looked from the screen to his mother to the broken glass. His face held that careful expression he wore when he knew something was wrong but didn't understand what. Mom. Are you okay? Jade's phone was in her hand, she didn't remember picking it up. Her fingers were already typing into the search bar, shaking so badly she had to correct the spelling twice, Ethan Blackwood. The results loaded. Net worth, $4.7 billion. Age, 34. Founder and CEO, Blackwood Technologies. Known for, revolutionary machine learning algorithms, strategic corporate acquisitions. Personal life, notably private, rarely seen at social events. She clicked on images. Dozens of photos, red carpets, business conferences, magazine covers. In every single one, she saw the ghost of her son's face looking back at her. Or her son had the ghost of his face. She didn't know which way the haunting went anymore. Mom, why are you crying? She wasn't. Except she was. The tears felt cold on her face, or maybe her face had gone cold. Her thumb scrolled through the photos, stopping on one from 7 years ago, a charity gala at the Mercer Hotel. He wore a tuxedo, holding champagne, caught mid-laugh by the photographer. She'd been there that night. She'd made him laugh like that. On the television, Ethan Blackwood smiled at the interviewer, discussing innovation and disruption and the future of artificial intelligence. His eyes, Caleb's eyes, looked directly at the camera, and for one impossible moment, Jade felt seen across 7 years and an unbridgeable canyon of wealth and consequence. Her phone was still in her hand. The search bar still open. She had 16 missed calls from the hospital asking her to cover another shift. She had $23 in her checking account. She had a son who just asked the question that would change all of their lives. And she had, suddenly, the last name of the man she'd spent 7 years trying to forget. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Ethan Blackwood contact information. Jade had been 23 and stupid enough to believe in chemistry. The Mercer Hotel ballroom had glittered like a promise, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women in gowns that cost more than her nursing school tuition. She'd been there as volunteer staff, directing guests to silent auction tables, invisible in her black uniform until she wasn't. He'd been standing alone near the terrace doors, looking at the party like it was a problem he was trying to solve. When their eyes met, he'd smiled like she'd caught him at something. "I'm Ethan," he'd said, and she'd believed that was his whole name. They'd talked for 3 hours. About her dream of working in pediatrics, about his confession that he felt like a performer in someone else's play. He'd been so present, so genuinely curious about her life, her thoughts. When he'd kissed her at midnight, it hadn't felt reckless. It had felt inevitable. She'd woken to an empty bed and a business card with a disconnected number. For months, she'd convinced herself she'd been a one-night distraction for a man who'd lied about everything, including his interest. Now, staring at her phone, Jade understood she'd been half right. He'd lied. Just not about the things she'd thought. Caleb was asleep, finally, after an hour of questions she couldn't answer. The cursor blinked in the message field. She'd typed and deleted 17 different versions. Too angry. Too desperate. Too casual, like she was asking him to coffee instead of detonating his life. Her finger hovered over the send button. This would change everything. For Caleb, who deserved a father. For Ethan, who deserved to know. For her, who'd built a life on not needing anyone. She pressed send before she could stop herself. Ethan Blackwood, we met 7 years ago at a charity gala. I need to speak with you about something urgent. It's about your son. The message showed as delivered. Then read. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. Ethan lived in 12,000 square feet of glass and steel overlooking Central Park, and he ate every meal alone. Success looked like this: a penthouse worth $40 million, a chef on call, and microwaved leftovers consumed standing at the kitchen island at 11 p.m. because meetings ran late. Again. The board presentation had reached slide 47 when his phone vibrated. His assistant filtered 800 messages daily. Only 7 types made it through his personal phone: emergencies, his mother, and flagged keywords his security team monitored. The preview showed on his watch, Jade. His hand stopped mid-gesture. The CFO continued talking about Q3 projections, but Ethan heard nothing except the rushing in his ears. Jade. He'd searched for her for 6 months. Hired investigators. Called the Mercer Hotel a dozen times, only to be told volunteer staff records were confidential. He'd lost his phone in a car accident the morning after, everything unrecoverable, including her number. She'd existed like a fever dream, real enough to haunt him, impossible to prove. He opened the message. We met 7 years ago at a charity gala. I need to speak with you about something urgent. It's about your son. The words, your son, hit him like physical force. The boardroom tilted. 16 executives stared as he stood, chairs scraping. We're done here, he said. But the Meridian acquisition. Done. He was already moving toward the door, phone pressed to his ear, calling her back before conscious thought caught up. His team sat frozen. Ethan Blackwood didn't leave meetings. Ethan Blackwood didn't take personal calls during negotiations worth $3 billion. She answered on the second ring. Jade. Her name felt like prayer. I'll be there tomorrow. Anywhere. Name the place. His voice cracked. And Jade, I looked for you. I need you to know that. I looked. Silence. Then, barely audible, tomorrow. I'll text you the address. The line went dead. Ethan stood in the empty hallway, hands shaking, and thought, I have a son. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and decades of grease. Ethan's Tom Ford suit drew stares the moment he walked in. An exotic bird landed in the wrong habitat. Jade sat in the back booth in wrinkled scrubs, her hair pulled into a knot that had come loose hours ago. She looked exhausted. She looked furious. "Paternity test first," she said before he'd even sat down. "No greeting. No preamble. Supervised visits only. And whatever you're thinking about throwing money at this situation, don't. I'm not looking for your money. I'm looking for a father for my son. Our son. If you can't be that, then your billions mean nothing." Her voice was ice. Her eyes were fire. "Yes," Ethan said. She blinked. "Yes to what?" "All of it. The test. Supervision. Whatever terms you need." He leaned forward, hands flat on the scarred formica. "Jade, I didn't leave because I wanted to. My phone was destroyed that morning, car accident on the way to a meeting. Everything was gone. Your number, the photos we took. I called the hotel for weeks. They wouldn't give me information about volunteers. I hired investigators. How convenient." Her jaw was set. "The billionaire couldn't find one nursing student in New York. I didn't know your last name. You didn't know mine. We were careful about privacy, remember? You said you didn't want." His voice broke. "I thought about you every day. Every single day for 7 years." Something flickered in her expression. "Doubt, maybe. Or memory. Can I see him?" Ethan's hands trembled. "Just a photo. Please." Jade's fingers were slow unlocking her phone. She turned the screen toward him. Ethan's breath stopped. The boy had his jawline. His hair. His eyes looking back from a child's face, smiling at something off camera. "He has your eyes," Jade said quietly. "I see you in him every single day." Ethan couldn't speak. He was crying in a diner booth, staring at the son he'd never known existed. Caleb sat cross-legged on his bed, picking at a loose thread on his comforter. "Do you think he'll want to meet me?" Jade's heart cracked clean through. She sat beside him, pulling him close. "Baby, yes. Absolutely yes. But what if?" His voice went small. "What if he thinks I'm not good enough? What if he has other kids who are better? Caleb, look at me." She tilted his chin up. "No matter what happens, I will protect you. Always. You understand?" He nodded, but his eyes were wet. Tommy Brennan said only kids whose dads don't want them don't have dads. At the Father's Day thing at school, I said mine was working far away, but Tommy said I was lying. Jade hadn't known. Hadn't known her son carried this weight, this shame that wasn't his to carry. "I've been reading about him," Caleb whispered. "Ethan Blackwood. He built hospitals in Africa. He made technology that helps blind people see better. He seems nice." "You researched him?" "I wanted to know if he was good. If he was someone who..." Caleb's voice broke. "I don't care about the money stuff, Mom. I just want someone to come to my science fair. To play catch. Marcus's dad teaches his whole soccer team and I want to be like the other kids." The loneliness in his voice was an abyss Jade hadn't seen because she'd been too busy surviving to look. The DNA results arrived 3 days later. 99.99% probability of paternity. The paper made it official, but they'd all known the truth from the moment Caleb pointed at the television. Jade called Ethan with shaking hands. "Caleb wants to meet you. Saturday. Riverside Park by our apartment. 2 hours. Don't be late." She paused. "And don't bring cameras or security that will scare him. Just be you." "I'll be there," Ethan said. "Jade, thank you. Ethan arrived 40 minutes early, pacing near the oak tree Jade had specified. He'd faced hostile takeovers and billion-dollar negotiations without sweating. Now his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then he saw them. Jade walking slowly, Caleb beside her holding her hand. The boy was smaller than Ethan had imagined, wearing a blue hoodie and sneakers with untied laces. Real. Solid. His. Ethan dropped to his knees in the grass before they reached him. "Caleb," he said, voice unsteady. "May I have the honor of knowing you?" The boy's eyes, Ethan's eyes, went wide. He looked up at Jade, who nodded gently. Then back at Ethan. Okay. Caleb took a tentative step forward. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Ethan smiled through the tears he couldn't control. "What do you like? What makes you happy?" Caleb's shyness dissolved into curiosity. "I like science. And drawing. I'm building a volcano for the science fair. It's gonna erupt with vinegar and baking soda. And I draw superheroes mostly, but also sometimes dragons." "That sounds incredible," Ethan said, and meant it with his entire soul. Caleb studied him carefully. "Are you really my dad?" Ethan met his son's gaze. "Biologically, yes. But I want to earn the right to be called Dad. That's something you should only give me when you're ready." From the bench 10 feet away, Jade pressed her hand to her mouth. "The science fair is next Thursday," Caleb said suddenly. "At 3 o'clock. Can you come?" Ethan had a shareholder meeting. 12 executives flying in from 3 countries. 6 months of preparation. "Yes," he said. "I'll be there." Caleb's smile was sunrise. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and hugged Ethan, quick, uncertain, his small arms barely reaching around Ethan's shoulders. Ethan held his son for the first time and understood what it meant to be completely, irrevocably changed. 3 months felt like learning a new language. Ethan showed up at the science fair, his assistant rescheduled the shareholder meeting, and watched Caleb's volcano erupt with a pride that surprised him with its intensity. He learned to make chocolate chip pancakes on Sunday mornings, though the first batch resembled charcoal. He sat through parent-teacher conferences and discovered his son was brilliant, anxious, and heartbreakingly hard on himself. "I got a B-, Caleb sobbed one evening, his math test crumpled in his fist. "I'm stupid. I'm so stupid." Ethan sat beside him on the floor. "When I was 10, I failed an entire semester of science. I was so afraid of not being perfect that I couldn't function." Caleb looked up, shocked. "But you're a genius." "I'm a person who learned that failing doesn't make you worthless. It makes you human." Ethan touched his son's shoulder carefully. "You're not stupid, Caleb. You're 8. And you're already smarter than I was at your age." The mistakes came fast. Ethan bought a $1,000 remote control car, Caleb played with it twice. "I just wanted you to stay for dinner," Caleb said quietly, and Ethan understood that time was the only currency that mattered. They coded simple games together. Ethan read bedtime stories in funny voices that made Caleb giggle. Co-parenting meetings with Jade stretched from 30 minutes to 2 hours, conversations drifting from logistics into something dangerously close to intimacy. Jade noticed herself laughing at his jokes. Noticed the way he remembered Caleb's preferences without being told. Noticed herself softening, and the terror of that kept her awake at night. "Hey, Dad, can you help me with this level?" Caleb said one afternoon, so casually he didn't notice Ethan freeze. "Dad." Ethan excused himself to the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes. Later that week, at the park, Ethan saw the camera phone pointed at them. Then another. His stomach dropped. It had finally begun. The headline hit at 6 a.m., Tech Billionaire's Secret Love Child Discovered. By 6:15, reporters were camped outside Jade's apartment building. She opened the door to take Caleb to school and found 20 cameras pointed at her face. "Ms. Morrison, how long have you been extorting Mr. Blackwood?" "Caleb, look over here. How does it feel to be a billionaire's son?" Caleb grabbed her hand, his face going white. They ran to the car through a gauntlet of shouted questions and blinding flashes. Photographers followed them to school, their cars boxing her in at traffic lights. Caleb was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. The school called 90 minutes later. "He's having a panic attack. He can't breathe. Please come now." Jade found her son curled in the nurse's office, hyperventilating. She held him while he sobbed. Ethan arrived within the hour, his face devastated. "I'm so sorry. I'll fix this. I'll fix it." Jade's voice was ice and rage. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. He's not a story, he's a child. Your world did this to him." That night, Caleb whispered to her in the dark, "Mom, I'm afraid of windows now. They can see through windows." The invasion escalated. Articles dissecting Jade's finances, speculating she trapped Ethan deliberately. Her address published online. Photographers waiting at the hospital where she worked. Ethan's team presented solutions, lawsuits, counter-PR campaigns, security details. Everything that would keep them in the spotlight longer. Jade stared at Ethan across her kitchen table. "Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we should go back to before." A sound from the hallway. Caleb stood there in his pajamas, tears streaming down his face. "You want to send Dad away?" The devastation in his voice broke something in Jade she didn't know could break. "No, baby. No. I just..." But Caleb was already running to his room, the door slamming behind him. The board meeting was a firing squad. 12 executives, all demanding the same thing: protect the company's image. Suggest the paternity claim was fraudulent. Distance himself publicly. Issue statements through lawyers. The stock had already dropped 4%. Ethan sat silent, watching their mouths move, hearing nothing but Caleb's voice, "I'm afraid of windows now." His closest advisor cornered him after. "You're thinking something insane. I can see it on your face." "As long as I'm a public billionaire," Ethan said slowly, "my family will never have peace. The story only has value because of what I represent." "You'd walk away? From everything you've built?" Ethan thought of Sunday mornings making pancakes. Of Caleb calling him Dad. Of 8 years he'd already lost. "What am I building it for?" he asked. "Another billion? Another acquisition? Or the chance to watch my son grow up?" The announcement went out 48 hours later. Ethan Blackwood was resigning as CEO, selling his controlling stake, stepping back from public life. The business world erupted. The media speculated wildly: health crisis, scandal, mental breakdown. But within a week, without an active billionaire to chase, the paparazzi moved on to other stories. Ethan showed up at Jade's door unannounced. She opened it, eyes red from crying. "I heard what you did," she said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." His voice was steady. "I lost 8 years. I'm not losing another day." Jade stepped forward and kissed him, not the desperate passion of the gala, but something deeper. Gratitude. Trust beginning to bloom where fear had lived. Understanding what he'd sacrificed, not just wealth, but identity, legacy, everything the world told him mattered. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "What do we do now?" "Now?" Ethan smiled. "Now I learn to be normal. Think you can teach me?" 1 year later, Ethan's kitchen was covered in flour. He lived 3 blocks from Jade now, in a modest townhouse that cost less than his old penthouse's monthly maintenance fees. Sunday mornings meant pancake attempts that rarely succeeded. "Watch this," Ethan said, flipping with excessive confidence. The pancake sailed upward, hit the ceiling, and stuck. Caleb dissolved into laughter. Dad, that's the third one. I'm establishing a pattern, Ethan said seriously. It's called ceiling art. Jade leaned against the doorframe, watching them, and felt something settle in her chest. This chaos, this flower-dusted ordinary joy, this was the heroism she'd never known to hope for. Ethan coached Caleb's soccer team now. Had dinner with Jade's parents every Thursday. Lived deliberately, quietly, invisibly. No paparazzi. No headlines. Just peace. Caleb had transformed, confident, laughing easily, secure in ways that broke Jade's heart to witness because she finally understood how insecure he'd been before. You know what's strange? Ethan said one evening, after Caleb had gone to bed. They sat on his porch, shoulders touching. I'm happier now than I ever was with the empire. Turns out I didn't need billions in active management. I just needed this. Jade laced her fingers through his. I spent so long thinking strength meant not needing anyone. Turns out it's knowing when to let the right person in. The school art show was crowded with parents and noise. Caleb's drawing hung in the center of the display, my family, 3 figures holding hands, messy crayon strokes, imperfect and beautiful. Ethan studied it, then looked at Jade. We should probably give him some siblings someday. Jade laughed. One miracle at a time, Blackwood. They left together, Caleb between them, holding both their hands. A family forged not by perfect circumstances but by courage, sacrifice, and the choice to show up every single day.